Welcome to Daily Focus. I will apologize for my voice. It is not your reception. It is not a bad signal. Today, it's just a bad voice. And so I am going to try to be very subdued and patient with this voice of mine. But I really don't feel bad. It's just kind of settled right in my throat. And so I will navigate through the day today. But I want to look at John chapter 1. We'll start reading in verse number 11, and we'll read down through verse number 18, but then focus on verse number 14, a very familiar verse as it relates to Jesus Christ coming in the flesh, coming as a child. And so verse number 11 says, "He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God, even to them that believe on his name, which were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. The glory is of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." The only begotten is a one of a kind son. There was never another one like Jesus. And so he came in the flesh, he dwelt among us as the one of a kind Son of God. And um, he perfectly balanced grace and truth. John bare witness of him and cried, saying that this was he of whom I spake. He that cometh after me is preferred before me, for he was before me. And of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. For the law was given by Moses, but grace and truth came by Jesus Christ. No man hath seen God at any time. The only begotten Son, which is in the bosom of the Father, he hath declared him. The word declared means to reveal. The Greek word almost gives the idea of to exegete, to really reveal the finer details of who Christ is. And so Jesus Christ was revealed of the Father, presented as the true Messiah, and even John the Baptist realized that this was the one who existed before him, but he was the one who was promised, and his job was to forerun or to foretell or to make a way for the Messiah to have his ministry here on this earth and ultimately fulfill the purpose of his coming by dying on the cross, being put in a tomb, and then resurrected from the dead. And so John is recognizing all of that. I want to zero back on verse number 14. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. John is saying, I want you to know that God came in the flesh. God didn't get his start in the flesh. God didn't get his start in a manger, but he came in the flesh. And as he came in the flesh, he dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. We understood there was something uniquely different about the Son of God. There was something uniquely different about the way that he conducted himself, the priorities that he had, the purpose that he fulfilled. There was something about him that told us so much about God. And we realized that he was the one of a kind Son of God, and he perfectly balanced grace and truth. And I think as we work to letting the Spirit of God have full control, that he might help us balance grace and truth, it's an important part of spiritual maturity. Oftentimes, people who are off balance on truth look at people who have grace and they see them as compromisers, people that are not holding the absolute law or holding the absolute line. and they see people who exercise grace are actually willing to see the story of Jesus dealing with the woman overtaken in adultery in John chapter 8, and seeing the fact that Jesus did not stone her as an illustration of compromise, rather than understanding that there's a place for grace being balanced with truth. Go and sin no more. And there was a balance in Jesus's dealing with people of grace and truth. People who tend to be too off balance with grace look at people with absolute truth, or off balance with truth, and they see them as legalistic, as hardcore, as people who have little heart or sympathy. And so we don't want to be off balance. We don't want to be all grace and no truth, but we certainly don't want to be all truth and no grace. Not when Jesus modeled for us how it can be balanced and should be balanced, so that we do stand firm upon what accurately and appropriately is reflected in the character of our Savior, while balancing it with the opportunity to show grace when people fail, when people fall short, when people hurt you or someone that you love, that we're able to demonstrate grace, but never at the compromise of truth, but that we never exercise truth at the compromise of grace, that there has to be a mixing of the two. And sometimes what tends to reveal where we are is, how do we treat people when they do something that affects me? In other words, am I willing to show grace to people who have hurt me, or do I want all law? Do I want the police officer right next to me when that guy cuts me off or drives recklessly, and then say, yeah, get him? Or do I want the same police officer to be present when I'm over the speed limit, or when I've rolled through a stop sign? Do I want the same police officer for me as what I want for them? Because it's really easy when we're heavy on truth to really be hypocritical. The same thing is true that if I'm all grace and I don't want to confront, I don't want to help people to grow and to accept that there is a standard, there is a law, and that I can be patient and I can be long suffering, but I don't get to change the law. I don't get to change the principle. And so I'm going to cheerlead, but I'm not going to compromise the truth. I'm not going to change it, but I'm going to help them graciously and patiently to embrace and uphold that truth. And so Jesus, like he did with the woman overtaken in adultery, he said, where are those that condemn you? Where are the ones who were all truth? And she's like, they're all gone. And Jesus said, well, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. In other words, here's the grace. I'm not going to condemn you, and I'm not going to stone you. But I do want you to know something. The truth hasn't changed. You can't do this anymore. And there is that balance. Some people just want to lower the hammer. They just want to make people pay. That's just not God's design. God would rather us mature and grow and learn than to just pay. And I'm thankful for that. And so may we work this week on balancing grace and truth. God bless you. I hope you have a great day.